So let's go ahead and take a look at another style of workflow. And this workflow is very different than the other ones that we've been looking at. So what we're going to do is actually open up a LiveGroup script using the open dialog. So this render passes tool that we made earlier, instead of creating a LiveGroup and loading it in through the file browser, we're actually going to just go ahead and open it as a script inside of Nuke. So that means now we have opened it up, all the inner workings of it is exposed directly inside our node graph. It's not in a subnode graph with the live group. That means we don't actually have a live group node in here. We're just working with it inside of it. Okay, so let's go in and load some footage at this point. I have some here. Let's put it right into there. Okay, great. So now that means that we have our node graph exposed. We have our custom tool loaded in, but there's a little bit of a difference. The difference is, I don't want to have to go in individually for all these properties, because there was time spent already having that done, right? Like there was the tool that was set that has all those properties on one single pane. So you actually do have access to all of that, because what we've done when we've loaded this in is we, in our project settings, if I just click over here and hit S, you'll notice that we also have the grade tab that was exposed. So in our settings now, we have access to all those custom tools or the custom knobs that were built out for this tool. The big difference is that we are actually seeing the inner workings of it. Everything is exposed and not collapsed into a single node. And that means that we can go in and add any additional nodes that we want to fix for each one of the avenues. So whether that's something like this where it's breaking down passes, or whatever the case is, whatever type of workflow it is, loading the actual tool in as a script, you have access to all of it, all of those exposed knobs in the settings. Now, the trade-off with that is that you'll notice I've been moving these around, and since it's not contained in a live group, I'm not getting the attribute overrides on top of here, the live group overrides, and that is a bit of a difference. So it's nice that you can work this way, but it is a trade-off by not being able to have access to the overrides on here. So definitely a different style of workflow that can also be useful, and it really depends on how things are set up or spread out to artists throughout the studio. Okay, now the last thing I want to talk about in regards to the workflows before we move on to the next sections, I just want to circle back for 1 second and talk about the live input to make sure that all the avenues are explored and that you're aware of all the possibilities. So what happens if we have live groups that are created inside of here? There's nothing inside them, but we're pointing to the same working file. In other words, we have a Nuke script with a live input and output. We've saved it out to disk, and all those 4 live groups are pointed at it. Now, when we go ahead and select this live input and reference in the master script, we have different options that we would normally see. And what that means is that now we can actually choose which live group that we want to be represented by that live input node, so we can go ahead and toggle through them. So I just wanted to show you that, as you may find this useful in a different style of workflow, or if you're ever using the live input node and you want to be grabbing in different live groups from it. This is also a possibility. So with that, we'll wrap up the workflow and move on. So those are the various ways that you can create live groups and use them in a collaborative way. So whether you're using the live input or the live group, and you can use a combination of any of those workflows, whatever makes sense for your pipeline. But also there may be completely new avenues that can be worked on and thought about using live groups. But those are some pretty common ways that you can be utilizing the live group and the live input node. Now, we talked very early on about how you create a live group, and it's pretty straightforward, right? We grab some nodes, we go ahead and hit Control L, and then we begin to arrange the nodes, publish it. But you can actually create a live group in a different way as well, and we can do that by actually just making sure of 2 things. So what we're going to do is we're going to save this as a Nuke script. We're not going to create a live group node, and we're going to publish it. We're going to do it just directly from this script. And you might be doing this because you just want to get going on a tool. You don't want to even create the live group, and you just want to start going and then saving. Or maybe you're joining into a master script later on. In other words, you're working externally, or you've been working on this for a while, and now you want it to be a part of the live group. So how you can do this is, all you got to do is make sure, and we'll use the custom tool as the example, is we're going to get rid of the footage for a minute. We've already planned out our tool. I'm going to make sure that I have a live input node, and then I'm also going to make sure that I have an output node at the bottom of it. Now what I want to do is just save this as normal, and if you notice, and if you're go ahead and hit S to get your settings, we have an option, is LiveGroup. So we can tell Nuke to save this as either just a normal Nuke script, or with the tagging it that it is a LiveGroup that we're actually creating inside of this new script. And by doing this, this is going to ensure that we don't run into any unexpected behavior loading in the live script, because technically you could load any Nuke script throughout your LiveGroup file browser, but you might have some unexpected behavior. So we can ensure that this is considered a live group by tagging this on. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and just save this comp as, I'll call this one off. And then I'm going to go ahead and save the same comp as, and I'll call this one on. Now let's open that up in a text editor and you'll quickly see the difference. So here we are. This is the off Nuke script, and we can start to see the familiar information that we have inside of it. But if we look at the one where we selected is live group and that was turned on, you'll notice right away that there's big difference down here, right? So we have the live group info, which is not included when we normally save a Nuke script. So this is another way that you can also be creating live groups without packaging them into a live group node and exposed, which is the standard way of doing it. But just in case you are working on a script or a custom tool, maybe you were working on it before live groups were introduced, you can always save that out as a live group just by hitting that switch. So I think that wraps up about the most of the content of what we're going to talk about. The last thing we're going to take a look at is some Python inside of the live groups.